Hi, I'm Ven. Welcome to my book corner. We have a book tag video today, brought to you courtesy of my good friend over at Traben Tomes. This is a Would You Rather book tag, a spooky edition. So, some would say that we're doing this a bit late. I would personally argue you never know what's in the dark, and we're going to the darkest time of the year. So, I think this is perfect timing. And let's be honest, the Christmas tree exists to scare dark spirits away, really. So, there we go. So, number of prompts for this one. This is a would you rather, so it's either or. The first one is really simple for me. Would you rather read a thriller or a supernatural book? And for me, all day, this is going to be supernatural. Firstly, it links in more closely to my fantasy roots. Fantasy is my preferred genre. A lot of it leans into supernatural dealings in terms of creatures within those worlds. It often pulls strongly from folklore as well, which I absolutely love. And I think there's more breadth of stories you can tell in that way. Thriller is quite self defining in how it works in many ways, and it's quite narrow, I feel. Whereas you can write stories with supernatural elements across most genres and it still work. Thriller elements do work in other genres, but they work as part of and supplementary. A lot like to me horror does actually, if I'm honest. Um, the other thing is I think pure thrillers work better in a visual medium like TV or film. This might shock people. I do occasionally watch things, and I do quite like watching thrillers. I find them more engaging on TV. It might just be that I've read rubbish ones, though. My last one was Holly Jackson, which is a YA one, which was fine. The one before that was a Riley Sager one, and it just felt like I was reading a corkscrew for no good reason. Too many twists that undermined the main twist at the end, and because you were that burnt out by how many different sideways turns there were throughout the story at that point, it just lacked any impact whatsoever, and I didn't care, even though on a technical level it was a decent twist. So nice and easy one for me. Supernatural all the way. Second one, would you rather read a ghost story or a zombie story? Now, I don't read a huge amount of either of these. I tend to skew more towards, as already mentioned, things like the Fae and folklore based creatures, outer planar creatures, stuff like that. Vampires, to a lesser extent, werewolves as well. So I've not read a huge amount of Ghost versus Zombies. I feel like because of depictions through visual media, once again, that Zombies feels a bit meh a lot of the time. Now, what I will say, and I'll pop a picture up on screen, I did read a zombie story earlier this year called Dark Bloom by Molly McCabe, which was absolutely phenomenal. A really smart twist on the zombie formula, and I do highly recommend that. But I would have to go for Ghosts personally. And I feel like this is an area where, in particular, YA gets it absolutely right, is worth saying as well. There's a lot of amazing YA ghost stories or ghost related stories out there, and other ones as well. But a couple that I want to highlight. The first one is 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot. So, this is a series set in York in the UK with a main character. Great, just on a side point, great representation in this book as well, um, with a disabled MC and LGBTQ rep as well. Um, and basically, the main character in this can see ghosts. It goes into ghost loops, and because it's set in York, arguably one of the most haunted places in Europe, certainly in the UK, works really well. It is part of a series. There's book 2, 12 Bones as well. I need to double check if book 3 is out, actually. That's something for me to look at as soon as I finished recording. And another YA that I really liked, which I think is highly underrated, is St. Juniper's Folly by Alex Crespo. So this is from Peachtree Publishing. Again, this has great representation as well as a bonus point there. This is a abandoned haunted house story, but it's a really, really smart turn on what the haunted house is and why it's acting the way it does. Really, really smart. Really enjoyed that. Do highly recommend checking this one out. I think more people need to read this one. But yeah, for me personally, ghosts. I think there's a more nuanced take you can have with ghost stories. You can go into the trauma of the ghost itself. You've got a mystery feature potentially with their death. Are they friendly? Are they malevolent? There's a lot more there, whereas zombies, in a lot of ways, feel a lot more one-dimensional to me personally. Again, might just be because I've not read decent zombie stories. Do recommend Dark Blue by Molly McCarb, though. Number 3, witches or demons. I like both. It depends on what you mean by witches. Demons gives you the possession angle, which I really do like. If you talk about witches like the cackling old woman warty in the woods, then it can work. Doesn't work so well for me, but if you're spreading out into various different cultural examples, for example, the Bruja or Bruca, I've just murdered that pronunciation, so I apologize for insulting anybody who is Latino in that statement. Then it gets really, really interesting. Books like Cemetery Boys do a really, really good job of showing this alternative to the normal Western witches view. Highly recommend that. Cannot wait for book 2 next year. I cannot go too far without mentioning Terry Pratchett. The Witches are amongst my favourite books in the Disc world. I'm not sure whether I prefer the Witches or the Guards books, if I'm honest. Granny Weatherwax is a legend. Recently reread Lords and Ladies, so I'll be moving on to another one soon. But these are amazing. It really does a good job of subverting the idea of the old warty wise woman, even though one of them very much sits within the maid, mother, and crone sort of idea of that. So really, really good. But I do like my demons. I like the possession aspect. There's an extra planar feel to them as well, which kind of fits in with sort of the Fae in some ways, often from another realm beyond, where things are. It's a lot harder to assign the morals of ourselves to those creatures. And actually, the other thing as well is it makes religion interesting to me in many ways. I'm not a religious person. I'm quite skeptical of religion in general, and I don't like it in a lot of stories, but it does work really well from the demonic aspect for me personally. Recent manga that I read, which you can argue whether this comes under ghosts or if this comes under demons. I've not read enough to actually know, but The Summer Hikaru Died, which is a story about a kid that goes into the woods and gets possessed by something. I'm going to class it as a demon for now. It may well be. I think it's more likely to be a yokai because it is Asian in origin, so a bit of a sideways one, but I wanted to recommend that anyway. That's really good. The Demon Cycle by Peter V. Brett, which I haven't finished yet, has a really interesting take on demons as well, and a demon invasion of the world. Not read this in a long, long time, actually. The Painted Man is book 1 in the series, but it's so thick with mythology. And also the idea of this sort of other realm where other creatures exist. And you have to bear in mind that demons and devils are not the same thing as well. So I kind of am conflating the two here a little bit. I think I prefer witches when they're done well. But I do find that witches tend to be more tropey. So I prefer a good example of a witch story, but I think overall I probably prefer demons, if that makes sense. Next one, would you rather read a book with 13 chapters or a black cat on the cover? I have no idea if I've read a book with just 13 chapters. I probably have. I'm not superstitious in that way, so I would happily sleep in room 13 on the 13th floor of the 13th building on a street. Perfectly safe with the knowledge that I would be perfectly fine. And I'm not particularly superstitious towards black cats either. I do like cats. I like cat stories. Grebo, I think, from Discworld is a black cat. Blackish grey, at least. So, wasn't really in the last book that I read, interestingly enough. I would read either, to be honest. I haven't read the book that Traben mentions, 13 Stories. I know Noah has and highly recommends the audiobook version, because I believe it's a full cast audio. But either or, I have no preference for this one. Next one, face your worst fears or be stuck in the mind of a killer. So I want you to pause the video, go down below, and tell me what you think I'm going to pick here. Because I'm really curious what people think. I'm going to leave it a second. 3, 2, 1, and we're back in the room. So this is actually another really easy one for me. I am a coward by nature. I am very much all bluster, no backup. So things like my fears are no. I will avoid them at all costs. I'm an arachnophobic. I hate the idea of dying because, again, I'm not religious. I have crises over these things. But generally speaking, past that, I've not encountered anything specifically that really truly scares me. I don't really have any massive phobias. Even arachnophobia for me is quite light. But people fascinate me. And I would love... First of all, it doesn't state how long you're trapped in a killer's mind. First off. So, loophole number 1. But people fascinate me, and the way that their minds work is something that I'd love to know. And being trapped inside a killer's mind is a perfect opportunity to learn. No, sorry, not learn. No, we didn't just say that one out loud. To observe and to find out more of the processes involved. And there's always a way out. Like, I would not be trapped in there forever. So, that's my feeling. Next one, would you rather watch a scary movie or read a scary book? Now, books don't outright scare me, first off. Movies do get me feeling more tense. And movies do jump scare me. I do jump scare relatively easily, which may be a surprise to some people that have spent time with me in real life. It depends on what the scary movie is. Because some scary movies I just can't stomach. The really sort of visceral, gory stuff, I don't like that. I don't particularly like it in book form either a lot of the time, because it feels gratuitous. So this is a bit of a top-up. I would probably say, from the emotional investment side, I'd rather watch than read, because it's a very different experience for me. A lot like thrillers, actually. I think horror, because of its nature, because of how atmospheric based it is, lends itself to the audio and the visuals as well, slightly more than it does when it's done well, or when it's done deliberately badly, I suppose, to how it works in a book. Books can go a little bit deeper, they can play more tricks with your mind, more subtle ones. I think I do prefer to watch. Next one, only read horror books in autumn or read all year round. Read all year round. Horror is not my preferred genre, although it is my second most read for the last 2 years. And I'm still relatively new to it. I have found the last few years I've done Don't Die July with my friend Noah over at the Bookworm, and I have felt a little bit burnt out by the end of both Julys because of how focused my reading has been, and I've read multiple different subgenres of horror in that time. I would rather spread out the reading. I'm not a mood reader per se, but if I read too much in a specific genre in a short period of time, I end up feeling a bit meh, and I won't read that genre again for a while. So I'd rather read it a little bit all year round. And I tend not to read a huge amount in autumn as well, bizarrely. Go figure. And finally, over the course of the year, would you rather read 10 spooky books over the course of the year or read them all in October? Same again. Over the course of the year, so I don't burn out. Very similar to the last one, although it says spooky rather than horror. I mean, I'd rather read more than 10, first of all. It also depends what you mean by spooky, but for me, personally, spooky stories are all year round. There's spirits linked to every time of year, so why wouldn't you celebrate those times of year with stories that fit that time of year? Because the other thing is, if you only read in October, there's an outside chance you'll get quite pigeonholed into autumnal horror, which is great. There's a lot more out there. But there we go. That is my spooky Would You Rather book tag. Have you got any spooky book recommendations for me? If you have, let me know in the comments down below. Who am I going to tag for this? I'm going to tag Kat over at Ginger Bibliophile, Elaine over at Cobalt Dragon, and Noah over at The Bookworm to do this one. If you want to, you don't have to. I know you're all spooky peeps, so thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all very soon.